The night belonged to the hum of lights and the rhythm of a mop gliding across marble floors. Every sound in the towering building seemed to hush when the world outside slept, leaving behind only the quiet persistence of one woman doing her work long after the rest had gone home. At the top of Lyran Enterprises, on the 32nd floor where power made its home, Elena Ward pushed her cart through the gleaming hallway. The polished steel doors, the cold scent of disinfectant, and the whisper of her footsteps were her nightly companions. The CEO's office was her final stop, a glass-walled chamber of wealth and precision. She had never met Caleb Lyran, the man whose name sat on the building like a crown. His reputation echoed down the corridors, the velvet storm, ruthless in the boardroom, measured in his speech, a man who could raise or ruin fortunes with a signature. Elena knew him only from headlines and the severe photographs that never showed him smiling. Her gloved hands worked methodically, wiping the surface of his immaculate desk when her rag brushed something soft beneath a notepad. She paused, frowning. A folded page, pink, faintly wrinkled, with stars drawn along the edges. Her pulse stumbled. Elena unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was small, uneven, pressed hard into the paper. Her breath caught as she read, "Thank you for helping me find my way back. Mom says I should always thank kind people.
I hope you're always happy."
Lily Ward, 5 years old. Eleanor's hands trembled. Lily, her daughter, her little girl who drew stars on everything. What was her note doing in Caleb Lyron's office? A chill ran down her spine. The thought of her child anywhere near this man, this distant figure wrapped in power, didn't make sense. She barely had time to process the discovery before the door clicked open behind her. He stood there, tall, severe, and startlingly human in the doorway. His coat hung open, the faint scent of rain following him in. When his gaze landed on her, the stillness between them felt almost alive. "I forgot a file," he said.
Voice low but firm. I was just cleaning," Elena stammered.
The pink page still open in her hand, his eyes shifted to the note. For a moment, something softened in his expression. "You're Lily's mother." It wasn't a question. Elena's throat tightened. "You know my daughter." He stepped closer, setting a folder on the desk. "She slipped that into my coat pocket a few days ago. I didn't notice until later." Her breath came shallow. "Why would she?" Caleb's voice lowered. "She was lost outside her school."
"I helped her find her class. You helped her?"
He nodded once. She was frightened. I tied her shoelace, walked her to the teacher. That was all. The simplicity of it, the kindness of it, didn't fit the image she had of him. "You?" she asked, before she could stop herself. A hint of a smile ghosted across his face. "I don't do good things to be seen doing them, Ms. Ward." The words hung in the air, steady and unadorned. She couldn't find a reply. "Your daughter's a good kid," he added quietly. "She speaks well of you." And with that, he turned, leaving the office as silently as he'd arrived. When the door shut, the room didn't feel so cold anymore. Elena looked down at the pink letter again, her heart twisting. "I hope you're always happy." It sounded like a wish meant for someone who rarely was. Morning came with sunlight spilling through her kitchen window. Lily's curls bounced as she ate cereal at the table. Elena stirred her coffee, still thinking about that night. "Sweetheart," she began, "careful. That man at school, the one you gave your pink letter to. Can you tell me again what happened?" Lily brightened immediately. "He was really nice, Mommy. I got lost after the balloons. All the kids ran away, and then he came. He tied my shoe. He fixed a broken chair with his little screwdriver. Then he said, 'Good kids always find their way.'" Elena's heart ached. It was so ordinary, so gentle, but later that day, when she returned to work, whispers filled the building. 3 managers had been fired overnight. "The velvet storm doesn't blink," one voice said.
"Cold man? No heart." Elena tried not to listen, but the image of the man who tied her daughter's shoelace clashed violently with the ruthless one they described. That night,
She found him again, not in his office this time, but in the model room where architectural designs filled the space with miniature skylines. He was bent over a cracked model, sleeves rolled up, glue bottle in hand. Alone. "You're fixing that yourself?" she asked. He didn't look up. "It broke." "You could have asked someone." "I could have," he replied simply. "But if I can fix it, why shouldn't I?" There was no arrogance in it, just weariness, a quiet conviction. "Most people would delegate," she said softly. "Most people aren't me." Elena hesitated. "You don't have to do everything alone." He finally looked at her then. The lamplight caught the tiredness in his eyes. "I don't mind alone," he murmured. He gathered his tools, turned off the light, and walked away, leaving behind a model now perfectly mended. That night, she realized something profound. The man everyone called a Storm spent his nights putting broken things back together. Weeks passed, and something unspoken began to shift. Caleb noticed her now, not through power or hierarchy, but through the small moments, the way she never rushed her work, the quiet smile that crept across her face when she read Lily's crayon drawings during her break. He started staying later. Maybe it was habit, maybe something else. In a world of sterile boardrooms and hollow smiles, Elena's quiet authenticity drew him in like light through fog. Then came the night the lights went out. The building plunged into darkness. Elena was trapped in an elevator between floors, fear clawing at her as the car shuddered. Then she heard his voice through the metal. "Hold on, I'm here!" Moments later, a beam of light cut through the narrow gap. Caleb pried open the doors with his hands, flashlight balanced in his teeth. "Are you hurt?"
"No," she whispered. "Just stuck." He extended his hand. "Take it." She hesitated, then reached out.
His grip was firm, steady, pulling her into the faint glow of the emergency lights. "You're worried about your daughter," he said quietly. "Always," she answered. "She's all I have." He studied her face, the strength and exhaustion woven together. "Do you ever think about yourself?" She blinked, taken aback.
"It's not about me." He nodded slightly, not agreeing, not arguing.
Just understanding. As the lights flickered back to life, they stood there for a moment, close, silent, both aware that something between them had quietly changed. In that dim corridor, he realized she carried a light he'd long forgotten existed. Sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest truths, and sometimes a storm finds calm in the smallest act of grace. A week later, the schoolyard buzzed with laughter, color, and music. The fundraiser had drawn families from every corner of the neighborhood. Paper lanterns swayed above rows of tables, and the smell of popcorn mingled with the chatter of children. For once, Elena wasn't in uniform. She wore a soft grey sweater and jeans, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Lily darted beside her, clutching a sketch pad and a fistful of crayons. "Mummy, do you think the balloon man will be here again?" she asked, eyes shining. "Maybe," Elena said, smiling. "But even if he's not, we'll have fun." Lily grinned and tugged her toward the art booth. The sunlight shimmered on her pink dress as she skipped ahead. It was one of those rare afternoons that felt untouched by worry, until it wasn't. Across the playground, a familiar figure stood near the donation table, dressed casually in dark jeans and a navy sweater. Caleb Lyron. He looked utterly out of place and yet strangely at ease, speaking with a teacher, his hands tucked into his pockets. No entourage, no cameras, just a man standing quietly among parents and children. Elena froze, confusion rippling through her. Before she could call out, Lily spotted him. Her little face lit up, joy bursting like sunlight through clouds. "Mr. Caleb."
"Lily, wait, but the girl was already running."
She threw her arms around his legs with the unfiltered affection only a child could give. Caleb stiffened for a heartbeat. then crouched down. "Hello again, Lily." His voice softened in a way that would have stunned anyone who knew him only from headlines. A camera clicked. Then another. Elena's heart dropped as she reached them, hearing the low ripple of whispers spread through the crowd.
"Isn't that the CEO?"
"Who's the kid?" She pulled Lily gently back, mortified.
"Sweetheart, you can't just—" "But Mommy," Lily said, pouting. "It's the nice man who fixed the chair."
Caleb met Elena's eyes. His expression was calm, composed, but there was a flicker of concern. Without a word, he nodded to her and walked away, leaving the chaos behind. By Monday morning, the photos were everywhere. Cold Titan melts? Billionaire CEO's tender moment with mystery child. Silent storms softened, but who is the little girl? Elena's stomach twisted as she stared at the headlines on her phone. Every detail of that innocent moment had been dissected by strangers. She didn't hear the knock on the janitorial office door until her supervisor called her name. "Ms. Ward, we need to talk." In the small conference room, the air felt heavy. "You brought your daughter to a public event connected to the company," they began. Allowing her to interact with executive leadership in a personal capacity, it reflects poorly. Elena's pulse pounded in her ears. It was a school fundraiser. Before they could respond, the door opened. Caleb Lyron entered. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "I asked her to attend," he said evenly. "She didn't know I would be there." The interaction was unplanned and harmless. "Let's not waste time creating problems that don't exist." The supervisor stammered something, but Caleb's tone left no room for debate. He turned to Elena. "You're not in trouble. You did nothing wrong," her voice caught. "Thank you." He nodded once, then left as silently as he'd come. That evening, when the building emptied and the floor lights dimmed, Elena saw him again through the glass wall of his office, alone, back at work. He looked exactly as he always did, except now she saw what others didn't, the weariness behind his composure. She wasn't sure whether to feel grateful or angry. He had defended her, yes, but he had also brought her and Lily into a world of attention they never asked for. A few nights later, she found a folded note on her cart. Office, 10:15 p.m., CL. For a long moment she stood in the hallway debating, but something deeper than curiosity, something that had been building since the elevator, guided her feet. His office was dimly lit, the city a blur of light behind him. Caleb stood by the window, hands in his pockets. He didn't turn when she entered. "You wanted to see me?"
"Yes," he said quietly.
"Close the door." She did. Her gloves creaked faintly as she clasped her hands. "I thought it was time I explained," he began. "Explained what?" "Why your daughter recognized me. Why I was at that school."
"Why I didn't walk away when she hugged me." He motioned toward a chair.
She sat, heart uneasy. "I grew up in a state-run orphanage," he said, voice low, steady.
"Overcrowded, forgotten. The roof leaked, the food was cold, and the walls—" He paused. "They always smelled like damp paint."
"I was 5 when I asked a volunteer to fix a broken bench. He told me there was no point. You'll grow out of this place soon enough," he said. Elena's breath caught. That day, I promised myself that when I had enough, I'd go back to places like that.
"Not to donate. Anyone can donate. I'd fix them myself."
Patch roofs, paint walls, replace what's broken. He looked at her then, eyes sharp but not cold. "But I never wanted credit. The moment good deeds become performances, they stop being good."
"That's why I hide behind the reputation I have."
"Keeps the noise away." Elena's voice softened. "But pretending not to care doesn't stop people from judging." A faint smile curved his lips.
"I'm used to it." She reached into her pocket and unfolded the pink letter, Lily's letter.
Placing it gently on his desk, she said, "This is what kindness looks like when no one's watching."
"A 5-year-old saw you, Mr. Lyron. She saw what the world doesn't." He stared at it for a long time, his expression unreadable. Maybe you don't want applause, she whispered.
But maybe the world needs proof that kindness still exists. Something shifted in his face then, small, fragile, but unmistakable. When she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Thank you," he said, the words quiet as breath. She didn't reply, but as the door closed behind her, the letter remained unfolded on his desk, catching the glow of the city light. There are moments that split a life in two, the before and the after, and most of the time they arrive wrapped in silence. The silence didn't last. By morning, the world had caught its scent. Headlines roared across every screen. The hidden philanthropy of a ruthless CEO, real or ruse. Caleb Lyron, saint or strategist. Anonymous donations linked to billionaires' secret identity. It began with one leak, a freelance blogger tracing anonymous payments through a chain of underfunded schools, finding one grainy photo, a man in work clothes painting a playground wall. When zoomed and enhanced, it revealed a face too recognizable to ignore. The image spread like wildfire. Caleb Lyron, billionaire industrialist, sleeves rolled up, paint-smeared hands gripping a roller. What could have been a moment of quiet admiration became a storm of cynicism. The press called it manipulation, a publicity stunt, a calculated campaign of humble branding. Caleb said nothing, but the company didn't stay quiet. PR scrambled, shareholders demanded answers, and every department buzzed with nervous speculation. In the break room, Elena overheard it all. "She's the one whose daughter was in that photo, right?" someone whispered. She must have known. Probably part of it, climbing the ladder one hug at a time. By the end of the week, she was summoned. Her supervisor's voice was clinical, rehearsed. "We're placing you on temporary leave until this is resolved. It's not punitive, it's precautionary." Elena's heart sank.
I haven't done anything wrong. That's not the point. Her badge was taken.
Her schedule wiped, her silence implied. When she walked out of the building, there was no anger, just exhaustion, the kind that lived deep in her bones. That night, after putting Lily to bed, she sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the stack of unpaid bills. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Her phone buzzed, her sister offering to drop off groceries, and Elena nearly cried from the kindness. Then came the knock at the door. When she opened it, Caleb stood there. No suit, no polish, just a man in a plain coat, eyes shadowed, shoulders weighed by something heavier than money could fix. He didn't wait for an invitation. He didn't need one. "I heard about your suspension," he said. "It's temporary," she replied. "They shouldn't have done that." "They're scared," she said quietly. "People blame what they don't understand."
I'm an easy target. He ran a hand through his hair, gaze distant. "This is my fault." Elena met his eyes.
"No, it's the fault of people who can't believe someone might do good without needing applause." He didn't answer. For the first time he looked small, not weak, just human. "I'm used to being misunderstood," he murmured. She studied him. The man before her wasn't the corporate giant the world talked about. He was a man who'd tried to fix broken things and had become broken for it. "But you," he said, voice raw, "you shouldn't have to pay the price."
You don't deserve this. Her answer was calm.
Certain. No one does. The words hung between them. A truth so simple, it silenced the noise outside. Caleb nodded once.
As if that was all he needed, to be seen without being saved. Then he left.
Closing the door softly behind him, Elena leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The world might have chosen to misunderstand him, but she didn't. The next morning, she found an envelope on the table, made from folded drawing paper and sealed with tape. On the front, in pink crayon, for Mommy, important, it was Lily's handwriting. Inside was a letter, crooked, misspelled, utterly sincere. Dear Mommy.
If someone is good but nobody sees it, I think we should tell. 'Cause if nobody knows...
Then mean people can lie about them. I think the world should know when people are kind.
Even if they don't say it loud, I love you.
And I love the nice man too. Lily Elena read it once, then again, and then she cried. Not quiet tears this time, but full, aching sobs that broke weeks of restraint. Because through all the noise and the headlines, her daughter had seen the truth. Later that day, she didn't go to work. She had no work to go to. Instead, she packed Lily's sketchbook into her bag and took a train 2 hours outside the city. The school she arrived at was tucked between cracked sidewalks and rusted fences. The walls were faded, the playground worn, but the air was alive with laughter, with hope, with the smell of new paint. And there he was. Caleb stood at the far end of the yard, sleeves rolled up, jeans dusted white, painting a wall beside a half-finished mural. Alone, focused. Elena didn't announce herself. She picked up a roller from the supply pile, dipped it into the bucket, and stepped beside him. He paused, sensing her before he saw her. When their eyes met, there was no surprise, only quiet recognition. Relief even. For a long while they painted in silence. The sun was warm. Children's laughter echoed in the distance. The wall slowly turned from grey to bright sky blue. Finally, Caleb spoke.
I'm not sure I know how to fix this, he admitted.
I thought staying quiet was right, doing good without proof. But now, he trailed off, the roller still in his hand. Now I don't know how to make people believe. Elena kept painting. You don't have to prove anything. He looked at her, really looked.
You believe that?
She met his gaze, sunlight glinting off her hair.
I do, he exhaled, almost like a laugh.
I don't know what's next, he said softly. But I do know. I want to stay wherever that takes me. Elena smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just real. Then stay. And they kept painting. No speeches, no cameras, no explanations. Just two people, side by side, restoring color to something that had been faded too long. A wall, a cause themselves. One act of kindness doesn't change the world, but it changes the story we tell about it. A full year passed before the world learned to see Caleb Lyron differently. There were no press releases, no redemption tours, no talk show appearances to rebuild his image. Instead, quiet ripples spread, small at first, then steady, widening into waves that reached across the city. It began with the Building Kindness Initiative. No one knew exactly who funded it, but those who'd been paying attention could guess. The program focused on renovating public schools, patching roofs, rebuilding playgrounds, supplying art materials where the budget had long given up. Every flyer carried the same tagline, because every child deserves a place that feels worth coming back to. Elena Ramirez was listed as the project coordinator. She managed schedules, volunteers, and donations, visiting campuses that smelled of sawdust and fresh paint. The title on her ID card was new, but the work felt familiar, hands-on, honest, unglamorous. Caleb worked beside her, rarely speaking of his past life in boardrooms. Suits had been replaced by rolled sleeves and calloused palms. He moved among teachers and volunteers like he belonged there, clipboard in hand, paint in his hair, at every stop. Lily came too. Her pink dress fluttered as she darted through hallways, greeting every worker by name. Her backpack carried crayons, snacks, and a stack of drawings she handed out to anyone who'd take them. People began calling her the little architect. They didn't know that she'd once written a letter that quietly changed the course of 3 lives. One autumn afternoon, in a small coastal town, Caleb returned to a repurposed classroom that now served as his makeshift office. A cracked whiteboard leaned against the wall. The air still smelled faintly of primer and chalk dust. On the table, sat a folded piece of paper, pink. His pulse softened the moment he saw it. He opened it carefully, afraid it might tear. Inside, in uneven handwriting, "Dear Mr. Caleb, thank you for showing me that good people don't have to be famous to be good. But I'm still going to tell my whole class that you're my hero. Love,
Lily, age 6? He smiled, really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes.
The drawing below showed a man with a paintbrush standing beside a woman and a little girl. Above them, in purple crayon, the words, "We fix things." He folded the letter and placed it over his heart. "Thank you, little architect," he whispered. Moments later, Elena entered carrying a box of donated books. She noticed the expression on his face and smiled knowingly. "She left you another one?" Caleb nodded, tapping his chest pocket. "She has perfect timing." Elena set the box down and brushed a strand of hair from her face. A streak of paint marked her forearm like a badge of honor. "You know," she said softly, "you never needed the world to see you." "I didn't," he agreed. Then, after a pause, "But now I want you to." She tilted her head. "Me and her?" he added gently. "That's enough." The simplicity of it struck her harder than any grand declaration could. She reached out, straightened the collar of his shirt, and whispered, "You're seen, Caleb, and you're known." He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, just once, quiet and sure. Outside, Lily's laughter echoed through the window, bright and untamed. Elena chuckled. "She's probably halfway up the monkey bars again." Caleb smiled, setting the pink note aside. "Then we'd better go catch our little architect." They stepped outside together, the late afternoon sun painting everything gold. The schoolyard shimmered with life, fresh murals drying on the walls,
New swings gleaming in the light, the scent of wet earth rising from the playground. Lily ran ahead, arms stretched like wings, dress swirling around her knees.
Her laughter carried across the yard, pure and unstoppable. Elena slipped her hand into Caleb's as they walked behind her. 3 figures stitched together not by obligation, but by choice, not by blood, but by something truer. Kindness freely given, courage quietly kept. The noise of the world, its gossip,
Its doubt, faded into the distance. Here there was only sunlight, laughter.
and a peace that didn't demand to be earned. Later, as they sat on a bench watching Lily build a tower from sand and bottle caps, Elena turned to him. "Remember when you said you didn't want anyone to know about the good things you did?" Caleb smiled faintly.
I remember. She studied him for a moment.
What changed? He looked at Lily, who was now pretending her tower was a castle, waving her stick like a flag. "You and her?" he said simply.
You made me want to be seen.
Not to be praised, just to be believed. Elena's throat tightened, and she squeezed his hand. For a long while, neither spoke. The sky blushed toward twilight, and the faint hum of the city grew softer, like the world itself was listening. Caleb Liron, the man once called heartless, had learned what it meant to be known not by his reputation, but by his choices. Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't shouted from rooftops. They unfold quietly, in classrooms, kitchens, and playgrounds until one small act of courage becomes a light no rumor can dim. And as the last trace of sun dipped behind the painted school wall, the mural gleamed in full color, a pair of hands holding a heart, surrounded by children's names. Below it, in bright pink paint, Lily had written the words herself. "Good people don't hide." Caleb laughed softly, shaking his head. "She's braver than both of us," Eleanor nodded. She always was. And together, under the fading light, they watched the world their kindness had begun to heal. Sometimes the quietest heroes change everything. simply by refusing to stop caring. Winter returned, softer this time. The air was cold, but it didn't bite the same way it once had. Maybe because, for the first time in years, Caleb Lyron felt warm from within. The kind of warmth that didn't come from success or wealth, but from purpose. The Building Kindness initiative had grown beyond what anyone expected. What started as one repaired playground now stretched into dozens of schools across the state, each touched by quiet generosity and community effort. Volunteers signed up faster than materials could arrive.
Local artists offered their time.
Retired teachers returned to paint murals of hope. No speeches, no photo ops, no signatures, just work that mattered. And at the heart of it, always were three people, Caleb, Eleanor, and Lily. They had become a familiar sight. The tall man with paint on his jeans, the woman with her steady eyes and clipboard, and the small girl who turned every wall into a story with her crayons. On a grey afternoon, the trio arrived at an old elementary school near the edge of the city, the kind of place most had forgotten existed. The walls were cracked, the windows fogged, the playground little more than splinters and weeds. Caleb paused outside the rusted gate, his hands deep in his coat pockets. "This one," he said quietly, "was my first school." Elena turned to him, surprised. "Here?" he nodded. "It used to be brighter, but even then it felt tired, like the world had already given up on it." Lily ran ahead, skipping over puddles.
"We're going to fix it,"
she shouted. Caleb smiled faintly. "Yeah," he murmured. "We are." Inside, the halls were lined with faded bulletin boards and peeling paint. A few remaining students peeked from classrooms as the volunteers unloaded brushes and tools. Eleanor moved with easy confidence, directing people, assigning tasks, laughing as she worked. Caleb followed her into the gymnasium, where the ceiling leaked and the floor was scarred from decades of play. He stood there for a long moment, taking it in. "This is where I used to sit during recess," he said, pointing to the far corner.
"I didn't have anyone to play with. I used to pretend I was invisible."
"Turns out I almost was." Eleanor's hand brushed his sleeve. "Not anymore." He looked at her then, really looked, and nodded. Hours passed. Paint rolled over years of neglect. Light poured in through newly cleaned windows. The sound of hammers, laughter, and children's chatter filled the halls. By evening, the transformation was astonishing. Outside, the playground glowed beneath strings of soft yellow bulbs. Volunteers stood admiring the mural Lily had helped design, a field of stars and bright-colored figures holding hands. In the center of the mural, painted in Lily's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "We see you." Caleb stood still, eyes glistening. Elena joined him, wiping her hands on her jeans. "She insisted on writing it herself," she said. "She always does," Caleb whispered. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. Not a restrained chuckle, but a full, open laugh that echoed through the yard. Elena turned to him, smiling. "What's so funny?" "Just remembering," he said. "A long time ago I thought being seen meant being judged. I didn't know it could mean being understood." She reached for his hand, and he didn't hesitate to take it. As the evening deepened, they gathered the last of the brushes and rollers. Lily was sitting on the swing, her legs pumping, her laughter carrying into the night. Caleb walked over and gave her a gentle push. "You know," he said, "you've got a way of changing the world without even trying." Lily giggled.
"I just told the truth," he smiled.
"Sometimes that's the bravest thing anyone can do." She looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Does that make me like you?" He crouched beside her.
"No," he said softly. "It makes me want to be more like you." She threw her arms around his neck.
And for a moment, all the noise of the world, the scandals, the doubts, the fear, melted away. Later, as the lights dimmed and the last volunteer left, Caleb and Elena stood outside the school, the mural glowing faintly behind them. The city stretched far beyond, restless and unkind, but here, within these walls, something rare had taken root. "You ever think about what's next?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, then at the horizon.
I used to plan every step.
"Now I think I'd rather just walk. With us?" she asked. He turned, a small, steady smile forming. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." They watched as Lily ran down the walkway, arms outstretched toward the night sky, her pink dress a bright flare against the dark. Caleb reached for Elena's hand again, their fingers intertwined, simple and sure, and together they followed the little girl who had reminded them both that goodness, when shared, could outlast any storm. The story of Caleb Liron didn't end with a scandal or a press release. It ended, and began again, with a painted wall, a child's letter, and a woman who refused to let kindness be silenced. Through them, the world learned something it had almost forgotten, that goodness doesn't need to shout. It simply needs to keep showing up. When spring came, a small article appeared on the back page of a local newspaper. Volunteers complete third round of school restorations. Program continues anonymous. There was no mention of names, just a photo of a mural, bright and new. In the corner, half hidden by the frame, a little girl in pink waved at the camera. And somewhere far from the noise, Caleb saw the clipping, smiled, and pinned it to the wall of his workshop, right next to Lily's first letter. He didn't need anyone to know, he already did. And so the story of a letter, a mother's courage and a man's redemption became something timeless. A reminder that in a world eager to judge, the truest acts of grace often go unnoticed. But those who see them
Never forget.